Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Fireside Creators. I am your host, Reverend Dr. Sherry Palace. Tonight, we are talking about how to overcome shame and feelings of failure. This is a heavy topic, but so needed since shame can have serious implication on one's life. It affects who we believe we are and if we are able to even have hope in life. Please remember to keep all comments and questions related to the show topic and that this is a safe space. I want to thank you for joining us, and I'm looking forward to all of your comments and questions. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe. And if you're on Facebook, grant StreamYard access so we can see your name when you have a comment or a question. Although StreamYard is really moody, so it's about a 20% chance that it will work. Facebook no longer allows outside apps to stream into groups. So until I figure out what's workaround, it will air on my page. So that's why if you didn't find it, that's why. I keep getting messages after every show. Where were you? Let's give a big shout out to my top sponsors, Ruth, Kirsten, Michelle, Ray, and Heidi. Thank you so much. I really appreciate your support. And if you would like to support me, you can go to sherrypalace.com, and there you will find literally dozens. Phone call. That's not supposed to happen. Hold on, please. There we go. So you'll find dozens of ways to support me on the website. And it just turned everything off. Oh, dear Lord. Okay, so hold on. This show is like a first of everything. Okay, hold on. This is hilarious. Okay. Let me find out where I was. Okay. Whew, live shows. Gotta love it. Okay. Back to what I was saying. The Wild Goose Festival is coming up. The dates are July 11th through the 13th, and it's in Harmony, North Carolina. Try and go. We will be doing a show there and on Friday. So you can actually come see the show in person. I have a special discount. Go to www.wildgoose.org and enter A-5S24. I'm sorry, guys, with the stupid code. For $50 off of your adult ticket. I hope to see you there, and thank you for welcoming us into our home and joining the conversation. I appreciate you all. Because I'm having technical difficulty, I'm not going to show you the banners that I normally do because I lost one of my monitors this week. So breathe with me, people. We're going to get through this. I would like, Beth is backstage going, okay. Beth Freeman, author, channeler, healer, and speaker, spent nearly 20 years in marketing, followed by 10 years in education. During her time teaching high school with the help of a dedicated energy therapist, she embraced her own personal healing. Today, her mission is helping others find inner peace and their soul purpose in life. She is a soul's purpose channeler, serving others by communicating with their personal spirit guide and angels. Beth authored Daylight for the Soul, Forgiveness for the Soul, The 5 Steps for Self-Forgiveness, and the children's book, The Itty Bitty Calico Kitty. She is also a co-creator of the Peace and Purpose podcast.
Thank you.
Welcome, Beth.
There. So good to see you again, Sherry.
Likewise. I always love you on the show. You always bring such good stuff.
Well, this is right up my alley. I was sitting there when you were talking about I'm going backstage. I'm breathing for myself too.
Right?
Yeah. This is that head. We're not making light of a heavy topic, but it is a heavy topic. So
it is a heavy topic.
Yes, it is, and I'm glad I could be here tonight.
Me too. Thank you. Okay, next we have Reverend Timothy Warren. He was ordained in the Episcopal Church in 2013. He is currently a priest with the Convergent Catholic Communion. He developed the outreach ministry, St. Francis ISM, which provides pastoral care to those in the community and via social media. Father Tim is a retired Air Force reservist and retired public school teacher. He lives in Phelan, California. Phelan. Hi.
Hey, Sherry.
How are you guys? Thank you so very much for coming on, and I apologize for that intro. My brother will take it and make bloopers out of it, so it will be put to good use. So this is a really tough topic, right? I mean, I unfortunately know people who have ended their lives over shame.
I do too.
And I think a lot of the shame that we encounter comes from the church and religion and some of the most intimate connections in our lives. In writing my book, and I don't mean to disregard this, but in writing what I did, I was let me rephrase that. In getting the education that I did while writing the book, once I dismantled the dogma that was man driven, it was really easy for me to just drop that shame. But I know a lot of other people still hold validity in those values, and that shame doesn't go away as easy as it did for me in that case. I have other shame.
Right.
But in that case, it was it was kind of like someone telling me my whole life that I was short. And then all of a sudden I realized that I was 6 feet tall. It was like,
wait, this is fine. I'll just,
once I realized that it wasn't true, then it was like, okay, that was easy to go. But talk to me about how people who still hold on to those beliefs so dearly, how difficult it is for them and what they should do.
I'm going to defer to Tim on this,
okay.
Religion, because of what we were talking about backstage.
Yeah. I was thinking about the topic of shame ever since you had asked me to be on the talk show, and I think there's and as Beth and I were talking before the show began, shame can be rooted in religion, but it's also very prevalent in our culture. But American culture has been influenced by puritanical thoughts for so long. And I think sometimes we kind of forget where our ethics and moral compass comes from. And I know for myself, as a gay man, there's another level of shame that's put on that, so, and also I'm from the South. I'm sorry, but Southern mothers know how to use shame.
Yes,
it's yeah,
they do.
And my mother grew up in a shame-based childhood herself. When her father tried to rape her, she went and told her grandmother. It was my mother who got beat for lying. My mother happened to be redhead and blue-eyed, the only redhead, blue-eyed person in the family. And she was beat a lot by her grandmother who raised her. She was always told, you're not good enough, and then she was a poor person in Mississippi going to school in sackcloth dresses, with a tin can for her lunch, and with kids in town that had more money. This was during the Great Depression. So there was the shame of being poor. And then she had the shame of the fact that she's a white girl with only black friends in a very racist town. And then she married 4 different times. They were all abusive. But the shame that was put on her was, well, if you were a good enough wife,
you would
made your husband happy, And I know my mom loved me, but I do recognize that in a way she used shame to manipulate me because that's all she knew.
Right. That's the way she lived.
Yeah. And then, I go and as a teenager and join the Pentecostal movement. Well, crap, they're big time on shame, So there's a level of cultural shame mixed in with the religious shame. And I reached a point one day, even for myself, where I thought, if this is what God's all about, screw it.
Exactly.
I can't take this anymore.
Right.
For me, the shame I dealt.
No, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, that's good. Keep going.
I was going to say, for me, the shame manifested itself in me by becoming an overachiever. to where I have to be an A student, you know, and if I didn't, I could get 100% on a test in school, but I would argue with the teacher over the extra credit because I have to be perfect. I have to be perfect in church. And then I joined the military, and
there you go.
And I do have some OCD tendencies. Even to this day, I recognize it. My house has to be perfect. My yard has to be perfect, you know, and that perfection, the drive for perfection, is kind of my way of dealing with shame, until one day I had nearly a nervous breakdown and got diagnosed with anxiety. And through counseling, what I learned was I'm constantly on guard, trying to be what I think everybody else wants me to be.
Yeah. And that's your future response.
Yeah. And the thing was, I did get judged harshly by people in church. I got judged harshly by people I had that were my superiors in the military at times, because my desperation to be accepted sometimes created wrong. Either I'm not responding correctly to people, or I become defensive when I really don't need to be defensive. And at some point in my life, I just realized, screw them all. I'm never going to make them happy, you know. So, and with some counseling and that, and then recognizing the roots of the shame, I'm not going to say I'm totally free of it. You know, I think there's always going to be that little voice in my head. And I remember some years ago and talking with my therapist, I said, here I am, a man with 5 degrees. I am a senior non-commissioned officer, high-ranking non-commissioned officer in the military, decorated. I'm a school teacher. I own a business. I've traveled the world. I've done all these things, and yet I still feel like a little boy trying to get approval.
Yeah.
And then I suddenly realized my shame is still trapped in that little boy, and I have to learn to. Yeah, I have to learn to nurture that.
That little boy. And that's a great segue, Tim, to, you know, the work I've done personally with myself, with my inner child, because my childhood, very similar to yours, my mother, very similar to yours, in the sense of she never felt good enough growing up. They didn't have a lot of money. My grandparents were mill workers, and, you know, just so many things you were saying were similar in that. I do believe that, you know, we kind of take on, even in the womb, you know, our mother's feelings and energy. I mean, she's feeding us, you know, through her. We're also getting her energy. And truly that shame carries over. It's a generational shame, you know. So we talked about, you know, religious indoctrination, societal, cultural expectations, you know, just talking about your upbringing, and I actually reacted much the same way to sexual abuse in my childhood, being the perfection. I had to be perfect. Everything else had to be, but that was my way of controlling what I felt shame around. And I think, you know, there's a lot around that. And when you brought up the inner child, you know, that's the work I believe we all do, or can do. We don't all necessarily do it, but it's being aware that, a lot of those deep-rooted feelings we have are rooted in childhood, and that's where you dig, you know, that's where you go to release it. And Sherry, I know you mentioned with the writing of your book, how you released a lot of shame in the writing of your story, and how powerful.
More the research. Yeah. Well, I mean, the writing was totally cathartic, you know, there was so much healing for that. But once the beliefs went away, then so did the shame with that. You know, once all of, like I said, it was like, you know, I had been told I was short my whole life, and then all of a sudden it was like, no, I'm really 6 feet tall. You know? So there really was no validity to it. So once I understood that, it went away. But like I said, that was just religious, you know.
Right. And that's
there's other layers of shame in my life. There's other things that have happened.
Yes.
But once so like I said, for me personally, The religious shame was easy to drop.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Sherry. And Tim, what you brought up, personally about your experience, with yourself, because I find it's easier to drop shame that other people have placed upon me. Yeah. That's easier to drop. What I've struggled with is the shame that I do feel for choices I made in response to pain that I experienced as a child, to fear. And so that's the work in progress. That's the work. And I think it's an important message to give to others that, shame that is not yours, that maybe was just placed upon you, is one thing, and can completely take over your life. I agree with that. It's the shame, though, that seeps in, that becomes a part of you. That is either your perception, because remember, our perceptions are our reality. And if it's what we believe about ourselves, that's the work. You say, how do we overcome shame? It's digging into that. It's talking to that little boy and saying, what do you need from me? I hear you.
Let me interject something right here. I want to differentiate shame from guilt.
Okay.
So guilt is I have done something bad. Shame is I am bad.
I'm bad. Right.
So, now, we go ahead, Tim.
I wanted to, when you, in our messaging prior to the show, you had mentioned this, and I got really thinking about it. The word you used, and Beth, you might be able to probably can explain this better than me. When we say I have done something bad, bad in a way is a shame-based word.
Yes,
true.
It goes back to the idea of sin. You have sinned.
I am a bad person. I have sinned.
Right. Versus maybe, hey, I did my best with what I knew at the time. So give myself a break and just learn from it, and move on. And now, of course,
it's easier said than done.
Yeah, because I have an instance, and I'm not going to get into the full story because I would start crying because I still have shame over this. But I was helping out a girlfriend, and I completely failed her. And I tried my best. I mean, I went over and above an anxiety-ridden situation to totally do my best, and I completely failed her. To the point of it could have been, it was just small disaster, could have been big disaster.
Right.
And the amount of shame I have over that incident, because I tried my hardest, because I did my best, it was last year that it happened. So I've numbed a little bit, I guess is what I would say. But I went dark. I went really dark because of this, because I felt like a fraud. If I couldn't even do this, what a total piece of shit person I must be. I tried my best and still failed. And, that isn't societal.
Right. That's within you. Yeah.
That is, you fucked up bad and you didn't even mean to, or you were trying to do this so good.
And there's
a total failure.
And then there's and that part, and you're tying shame and failure together, by your own standard, not anyone else's. And that, that's where, everyone else can tell us, I can say to you, Sherry, oh, you really did do your best. You're a good person, all these things. If we don't believe that, then it doesn't matter what anybody says if we don't believe it. And so, so much of the process, and I'm sure you've done this with that particular situation to heal from it, is to recognize that healing is necessary to releasing shame, that there's a healing aspect of, what transpired, and that, and I'm not talking just about your situation, Sherry, I'm talking about whatever it is that we personalize, our personal choices that may have hurt others and or ourselves, and how we can, and this kind of speaks to that self-forgiveness, how we can forgive ourselves, because that's a part of releasing shame is you simply, and this, Sherry, you cannot change the past. You know, you can't go back and do it different.
And there's nothing I can do to make it better either.
Right,
You
right.
know? I mean, it was,
It
you
is
know,
what
like,
it is. Yeah.
if
And
I
do you,
screw up, I can just say I apologize. I can try and make it.
right.
But with this certain situation, there was literally nothing I could do to make it better.
Well, it's good that you brought this up,
Right.
because I feel like for the viewers, and Tim, you know, pipe in here too, that there's shame that we can say, okay, this is how our mothers were raised, and they were raised in shame. And I have a Southern mother who, you know, definitely very hypercritical, very much, you know, that whole thing. I totally relate to that. And that was easier to set aside than the voice inside of me.
Totally.
Yes.
And my decisions that I still make that were reactions to things, and I've learned this pattern, and it's like, oh my gosh, how can I, and like Sherry, if you do your best, or how can I, you know, release shame that seems to be stuck, you know, inside, and is creating a cycle of, you know, pain, because it's pain. You know, you said you couldn't tell the whole story. I'm using that at you as an example, because you would cry again. So there's still pain there to heal from that.
So disappointed in myself, you know,
Yeah,
that I
and
let her down
so,
and all of that.
right. And so I believe part of overcoming shame is sitting down with it and facing it. And, you know, just sitting and I'll use myself as an example instead of keep referring to you, Sherry, because I know you've looked at your,
It's all good.
but it's like, you know, to look at myself and go, gosh, you know, this is really my addiction, is overspending and money. If you read my book, you'll know, you know, it's overspending, just, and it's very harmed many aspects of my life. And I find myself better, but then it's a slippery slope. So it's a shame that doesn't completely go away. I can be so successful in all these ways, but then here's this one thing that if I go down that one path, there's that part of me that it's almost like this little part of me, that movie that's coming out with all the emotions and feelings, you know, and everything is coming back out again. Yeah. And I'm sitting here going, well, here it is. It pops up. So I sit and I look at it and I just go, okay, Bethy, which is what I call my little girl. This is the part of us that we really, we don't like. And it's the part of us that needs us the most. And so I just,
I had something happen to me when I was a kid. I spent 3 years in Canada in middle school, 7th, 8th, and 9th grade. My last year there, 9th grade, which means I was about 14, 15. I stayed with the teacher and his wife. The last thing I remember that man telling me was, you were such a disappointment to us. You were not the kind of kid we thought you were.
Wow.
And I knew another family. They were a farm family, very rough around the edges. And that I went and talked to that mother and said, this is what my sponsor said to me. And she said, and pardon the language, but I'm going to say it the way she said it to me. You're a fucking teenager. What else does he expect? Teenagers are assholes. Of course you're an asshole sometimes. You know,
the more of a true statement has never been said.
That's true. I taught teenagers. I know. Yes, I agree.
And the thing was, and what got me was, now as an adult, and here I am, 60 years old, and I still struggle with what that man told me. And reality is, he might be dead by now, for all I know, because he's probably in his late 70s. But the thing was, he didn't take into account, I'm living in Canada. That was the year my mother was getting divorced, and we were losing yet another home. I had no idea where we were going. I'm in Canada. Mom is in Southern California. I have no control over a damn thing that's going on. And I was also dealing with depression. But, you know, we're talking, this would have been the late 1970s. Nobody talked about depression.
Nobody talked about it at all. Yeah, nobody talked about it. And recognizing, that this was a shit time you're in.
But when she told me that set me free, because she allowed me to be a teenager with emotions that are all over the place. And even she recognized, she says, you got a lot going back home with your mom and you're not even there right now.
Yeah.
Some years later, my mom and I were talking about something. She says, oh, well, you know, at times when you were a kid, you do this or you do that. And I looked at my mom and said, you know what? First of all, Mom, I'm a grown ass man now. So why do you keep throwing my childhood in my face? And secondly, I was a kid. Of course I was a screwed up little person, you know? I'm like, and I looked and I said, Mom, like, you got your shit together all the time? So why did you expect me to have my shit together when I was a kid?
Exactly.
But you know, Tammy, you still remember that though, that what that man said. That's the the part I'm pulling out of what you said, because that is a level of shame that's still there. You know, if it still gets in your mind, if it still gets there.
But what I've done with that though is now I mentor young adults. And it enables me, when I see them racked with shame, I'm able to sit there and say, let's really look at what you did. It's like, and back to what you were saying, Sherry, sometimes, you know, the young people I work with, sometimes they make some bad decisions. But I ask them and say, what was your motivation? What was motivating you at that time? And what tools did you have to work with? And oftentimes their intentions were good.
Yeah.
Because I do work with people that are impoverished and lack some education, that they don't have the same kind of tools that the three of us have.
Right.
You know, because, you know, so they're doing their best. So I tell them, I said, let's not focus on the fuck up. Let's see what can we do as we move forward.
Right. Because you
know that this is like the 5th or 6th time Tim has been on the show and he's finally cursing.
Oh,
well, and you know, here's the thing: we are not our mistakes, and that you know, it's
guilt and the shame.
We can feel the shame, but the shame is not us. But let's just address what's true out there, because it came up briefly in the intro. You know, someone close to me took his own life because of intense shame, in part because of there was mental illness there as well, and hereditary, but because of unhealed wounds, you know, from childhood. And so the very real process of how do we overcome shame, you know, is so personal, so unique. It's hard to say there's a blanket way to do it, right? And you know, those young people that you mentor, Tim, are so fortunate. Sherry, those that read your book that have gone through, like I did, I read the first part, you know, and I mentioned this to you, and it enabled me to have another layer of healing around my childhood, because in some ways, I remember you said it's not a competition on who had the worst, you know, childhood, but it was kind of this, oh gosh, okay, somebody had it worse than I did on, you know, it was just, I mean, but the reality is there was a little girl inside me that was kind of like, phew, okay, you know, like I'm not alone, even though she, you know, and so how can we, you know, provide those tools, you know, to each other. And part of that is how do we, and, you know, we're not here to, it's how do we start changing our society to be kinder and gentler and more loving and understanding, that when people make mistakes, when we do things, we're acting out of pain. We are acting out of, it might be old pain. It may be old, you know, indoctrination. It may be old patterns or beliefs. But anytime we do something that hurts ourselves or someone else, it brings that shame, you know, that feeling of, and are there people that don't feel it? Probably, yeah.
I want to address that too, but I want to go back to the overcoming, because that's really important. So one of the tips tips and tricks that I've learned throughout the years is talking to yourself as you would your best friend, right? So there was, up until I was 45-ish, I was super ashamed of who I was as a teenager. I could never reconcile that person and who I am now. Then I uncovered a repressed memory. At that moment, again, my shame imploded and went, no wonder I was so fucked up.
Yeah.
You know, and all of a sudden, because again, as a friend to myself, I could say that,
Right.
before, even as a friend, I would be like, you were really bad. You really pulled some shit. Um, and there was no peace, there was no grace until I understood my motivations behind things.
Yeah.
With this other situation that I've said, I don't. If my girlfriend told me, I told the story to my girlfriend this morning, and she's like, "Damn, girl, maybe you should go volunteer." Which is probably what I would say to a friend too. So, in lack of grace and love and explanation that you can give yourself, and what else is there?
Okay.
I mean, the question, that is a question. I mean,
Yeah. What else
Yeah.
can you? Yeah.
yeah, I mean, if you would say to your friend, if you're being nice to yourself and it's still, wow, you screwed up bad.
Well,
Yeah.
it's that, what did I mention before? And Tim, I want to hear what you have to say as well. It's that's part of that self-forgiveness, it's that ownership, I screwed up. I really did. I there's no justification. I did it. It's ownership, right? And then it's having compassion for who you are now. So who you are now has compassion for who you were a year ago, Sherry.
Well, and she's more compassionate. This
Yeah.
friend,
And you
she's
are.
more
Yeah,
compassionate on me than
exactly. But
when
that's
I told
the
her how full of
self-compassion,
shame I was, she's like, "Oh,
right?
that's ridiculous,"
Yeah.
which didn't help.
Yeah. But I'm just saying, the self-compassion, we can talk it. But Tim, you brought it up when in our show about this indoctrination that we're not worthy, we're not good enough, that comes along with
Right.
with quite a lot of religious indoctrination, but also societal and cultural,
Right.
that we're not good enough, we're not worthy. And then if that's also carried through in our home, so we're getting it outside of our home, we're getting it inside of our home, and then we create circumstances where we're doing things that we feel bad about, and then that perpetuates it. So it's cleaning out the proverbial, how do you clear,
Right.
right?
We're like I'm going to date myself, but like a cassette tape, It's, you
Yeah.
know, you can take an old cassette tape and record over it,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes the old recording bleeds through a little bit into the new recording. And yeah, and I think even though we're trying to re-record ourselves, the
Mm-hmm.
old recording will bleed through at times. And
Great observation.
I don't know if it's ever going to go away. I mean, there are like periods of time in my life where I'm kind of ashamed of the way I handle things.
Mm-hmm.
The memory may never go away, but I can work on how I respond to that memory.
Right. How you react. Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
And
That's
so
great.
I have to be consciously aware, of some of the things I've done, whether it was out of anger or whatever, because, and I have to accept I'm not going to make everybody happy. And I do have a personality that will rub some people the wrong way. And I just reached a point where this is me. I'm not going to go out of my way to be an asshole, but sometimes people may perceive me as an asshole, and
being authentic. You're authentically.
I have to give ourselves some grace. If I'm, and it's okay. And I've had people flat out tell me, I don't like you. Okay. Fine.
Yeah. And
I said, because
just being
whether
true
you
to
like
yourself
me or not, it's not going to change your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Tim and Sherry too.
But at the same time, I want to be aware of how I am.
Right. Right. But also you brought up though a good point of knowing ourselves and being our true authentic self, and the fact that we are, as human beings, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to, do our best, and it's not good enough. We're going to face people who don't like us for whatever reason. We're going to face these things as a human being. We can't release everything, all fear. It's part of being human. And don't you think that shame, I was saying this earlier, and Sherry, I remember you said, wait, mention it, on the show, because I feel like shame is so close to like almost terror, in the level of fear, if all negative emotion is rooted in fear, shame is right down there, because it's like, if somebody knows this, they're really not going to love me. They're going to reject me, or I am not enough. I am not worthy if they know this. So we hide our shame. That's why, we hide.
Even that for me, though, it was more like instant imposter syndrome.
Oh,
yeah. It was like, I tried my best and I totally failed. And so I must be a piece of shit.
Imposter. Right.
Yeah.
It's an interesting take, because, working with clients like I do, I realize, well, the person who died is a case in point. He was my significant other, and I couldn't help him. Here I am helping all these people, but I couldn't help this person.
Exactly.
Right. And so it's that recognizing that, and this, I think, is really what it comes down to, is we are responsible ultimately for saving ourselves, for loving ourselves, for helping ourselves. I mean, yes, anyone else, it's great to have people that are supportive around you, but ultimately it's the relationship you have with yourself. And
I mean, my book is dedicated to Marcus McCoy, who died because of shame. He killed himself because of shame. The evangelicals told him that he was gay and going to hell and an abomination. So he went and jumped off a fucking bridge. So shame can be so destructive, especially when it's in family imposed, religious imposed, and all of those
things.
It's
been a lifetime of it, that indoctrination of shame. I mean, I remember there was a book title that came to me, Religion in America, The Indoctrination of Shame and Fear, in fear. That really, it was just, and you can go across the board.
Yeah.
How do you rule people? Through fear. You don't control people through love. You control them through fear as humans, because we're so motivated by, to avoid fear, whatever, being perfect, Tim, like you mentioned, right?
Right. I think too, it's the fear of punishment, because we feel ashamed for not being perfect. Therefore, I must be worthy of punishment. At least that's what we're taught, right? It's like, you are a sinful person. You should be ashamed of what you are, and God's going to punish you. And
that
no wonder
I never
didn't either.
Like this God that's going to punish you. I'm thinking, I always thought to myself, earth is hell. There's no other that's worse than earth. I'm like, this is hell. So, so we've talked about personal shame and religious shame, societal shame, right? Cultural shame. What other aspects of, and how that ties in with failure? Because I know, we, in our culture, society, it is set up to be, if you don't have XYZ, if you don't own a home and do this and do this and do this and do this, then you're not a quote unquote success. And there are, so many people out there that feel ashamed because they literally aren't living up to an expectation that isn't even what they want. It's just what we've been told we're supposed to.
I think that really goes back to authenticity, because, like my mom, evangelical, lover, but crazy, evangelical, she constantly tried to put shame on me because of the biblical beliefs. And I just thought they were ridiculous. I mean, it was one of those things where I just don't get that. And I was not, taken into that shame. And then one thing she said at one point in her life that I held on to, that she didn't so much, but it was excellence, not perfection.
Ooh, I like
and that in and of itself, because she tried to raise me as perfect, everything had to be perfect. And then it was, no, but I can do my best. I may not be perfect, but I can do my best. And I'm not putting anybody else's shame on what I believe.
And so if you say, I'm going to do my best, and then your words, I did my best and I still feel ashamed.
I've had that stupid 70s sitcom, song in my head all week. I did my best, but I guess my best wasn't good enough. And that's the only thing I remember, because I keep wanting to go, and then what?
Right. Well, and then
the answer to that.
Reconciling with yourself. And Tim, you brought it up. It's that, you know, it's taking, hey, this is me. You know, I can be an asshole sometimes, or, you know, I can get angry. I mean, we're human. It's that recognition that just because and I really feel like I'm going to hit this home again because it's so important. We are not just our mistakes. We are not just those words that other people told us or we took on as our own. We are a combination of so many things. We're light and shadow. You can't have one without the other. You can't have shadow without light.
And we're not perfect.
No, we're perfectly
imperfect. And I think too, we need to look at those people who are using shame to manipulate us. Kevin just wrote this comment. Shame is often used as a manipulative tool to keep us in line.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when I look at the people to manipulate me, the man who said I was a disappointment, his wife divorced him. You know, when I look at clergy who have said I'm not worthy enough, all of them have been divorced multiple times. And I'm not saying there's nothing necessarily wrong with divorce, but obviously, but it's kind of like your partners couldn't stand you. So why are you know, but yet you're wanting to shame me because I'm not living up to your expectation. And people can only shame us if we allow them to.
And Kevin brought it up, that comment, because that's how we're kept in line. Like he said, that's how you can manipulate anyone if you keep them in a place of shame, because that's in a deep state of fear.
Right.
And we'll, as human beings,
I had
to avoid that.
Right. When I became a recruiter in the military, I was a recruiter for about 4 years. That's all I could take. The chief, my boss, told me one day, he's like, Sergeant Warren, I noticed that you take lunch at 12 o'clock every day. And I'm thinking, because at 12 o'clock I'm hungry and I'm a very disciplined, regimented person. You know, I eat breakfast at this time, lunch at this time, dinner at this time. That's how I manage my weight. Now, he was overweight and he had had a massive heart attack and bypass surgery. But here's what he's trying to shame me, saying, when I was your age, I would be driving in my staff car to appointments. I'd have a Big Mac in one hand and I'm driving with the other. I'm not one to keep my mouth shut. And I just looked at him and said, Chief, you had a massive heart attack, didn't you? And you're struggling with your weight. And everybody in the office was like, oh shit, I can't believe Sergeant Warren just said that to him. That was my way of taking his shame, attempt to shame me, and say, I'm giving this back to you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, but I don't think that's productive.
I
don't think that's productive, though. No offense, but I think that, you know, we go back to the eye for an eye leaves everyone blind. And if you are impacting shame on someone else, then it is a vicious cycle. It does. And I also think that if it's overused, it can result in a lack of shame. We see a lack of shame in some of the biggest atrocities in our life. So I don't want to say that shame is all bad. Shame has kept me in line and is in check as a good person, trying to be a good person. A lack of shame allows the worst of humanity to run free. So, while we should not live in shame, we should not have shame put on us. I also think that it can be also a good tool so we don't do it again.
Yeah. And learn from.
Right.
I mean, what I learned from this situation with this friend is I shouldn't do that anymore. I was able, it's like there's something good has got to come out of this. I was looking at kind of maybe a different life path, but when I failed so much at it, it was like, nope, not going to do this. Change path again. This was not the way. Yeah. And that's the way I've, to try and look for something good. What can I learn from this situation? Right. Without, pushing it on, drowning in it, all of those.
I see a difference between. Right.
Go ahead.
I see a difference though between shame and conviction. Shame makes us feel worthless, whereas a conviction would sit there and say, wow, I really missed the mark on this one. I'm not going to beat myself up over it, but I am going to learn from it so I don't do it again.
Yeah.
And I know it might seem like, well, what's the, yeah.
Go ahead, finish.
Go ahead, finish. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, it might seem like I'm quibbling over words, but that's how I freed myself from shame. Yeah. It's like, you know, I can see where, okay, yeah, I need to work on this area, but I don't need to feel shame over it. It's just, I need to work on it. You know, and even with the chief, I had to learn how not to be so blunt when he would say something that would piss me off. You know, I need to maybe be a little bit more diplomatic with my
yeah. And that's something you learned, you know, that part of that putting his shame back on him, like Sherry said, yeah, maybe that wasn't the way I want to respond. I don't want to respond in anger. But that was your way of pushing that shame back. So what about the, you know, and it was brought up by someone watching, about the inequality, you know, imposed shame that there are, I mean, in our culture, in our society, religion. You were talking at the very beginning, Tim, about your mother's poor upbringing and that view of being poor, which I also, you know, both my parents went through that feeling of being poor. And then, you know, even in, you know, growing up, my mother, she always put that, you know, wealthy people had it better. They were better than us. You know, there were always that, even though we were pretty middle class. So doesn't it seem like there is a difference in the amount of shame that people carry depending on how much power they have?
Totally.
You know, in terms of, like you were talking, Sherry, about people that don't feel shame at all are usually ones that are high in power. They, you know, they're impervious to whatever the masses. So just
I think
the perfect example for it. Yeah, I was going to say that you just described the MAGA cult that's running America. They have no shame, no sense of guilt, no sense of responsibility at all. And I sit here wondering, how can you not see your own hypocrisy?
Right.
But it's almost like there's a mental defect there. There's conscience is so seared.
Yeah.
And I think we've all met people who think that they're perfect.
Okay, go ahead, Sherry.
Money is the root of all evil, right? We can all agree on that. When you use
the love of money.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, that is more. But when you use money as a value for humanity, that is going to inflict shame, and that's also going to remove shame. Because if money is the ultimate goal, and which equates to power, which equates to all of those things, then you can't have shame. You can't have any of that, because none of that matters if money makes you perfect.
Yeah. And that's the society. I would even, it goes beyond our society. It's worldwide.
Worldwide. Yeah, totally. I mean, the class system, all of that.
All of it. It's worldwide. And, you know, we're not going to solve, you know, that today, though. To answer you, Tim, I taught George Orwell to high school students, Animal Farm in 1984. And the masses are the sheep going, you know, 4 feet, you know, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. And then they switch at the end, 2 legs good, you know, when the pigs are walking upright. So it's this, you know, it's so easy in a cultish environment to, I mean, it is, and it speaks to the cult environment. You have blinders on. You don't see it. You don't want to.
I think that we should also define what should be shameful, because money should not be shameful. Plight in life should not be shameful. Where, you know, how you were born. I think that the only thing that we should be shameful of is, and again, this is easier said than done, but intentionally hurting someone, whether that be that you just don't care,
or what? Yeah,
whatever that is, that's a reason to feel shame. Not being a person of your word, not trying hard enough. Those are things to feel shamed by. Not how you were born, not who you choose to love.
Yeah,
and none of those should bring shame.
And Sherry, it's interesting you say that, because the shame that I've carried is not to do anything with religion. I wasn't indoctrinated that way. It's everything to do with how repressed memory. I didn't know why I was reacting the way I was, but I know I hurt, people in my life before I even knew a whole section of my childhood. So it's, the shame I do still and have worked through and still continue to work through the layers of has exactly to do with what you just said. My actions, my words, how I have hurt others, how I've hurt myself. It's not society. I mean, I've, it's possible, like you said at the beginning, Sherry, taking off that shame of the indoctrination when writing your book, right? It was just like, I don't carry this religious shame. It's harder, at least personally, for me to let go of shame of something I knew full well what I was doing, and I still did it. And I hurt.
And you can't have the grace. Look, we talked about the repressed memories earlier. For me, as soon as I realized why I was an asshole, it helped. That didn't.
I think it helped me with some of it, but when I still have some, not hurting others, I would say it's more sabotaging maybe my own peace. That's like, the shame.
Yeah, I've got some of that too.
We can carry shame around just how we treat ourselves. Even when we're treating others, better or in a more loving way, are we loving ourselves? Because ultimately, let's bring it back around. It's that it's really removing shame is believing in your own worth and your own value. And loving yourself.
And I talked about that in the intro, because I think if we have shame, I don't think we can have hope. Am I wrong in that? Because when I was deep in the shame after this incident happened last year, I lost all hope. I didn't believe in myself. I said, I felt like a fraud. If I couldn't do something this simple, how could I, do anything big? So I don't know. My mind went blank. I don't even remember what I was saying. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Something else.
Go ahead, Tim. You were going to say something about that,
Well, there's.
That's what I was talking about.
Oh, go ahead, Sherry.
I was just to say, I lost all hope when I was so deep in the shame, so I think that if we can give people hope that, you are not as bad as you think you are right now. I was able to overcome it by, again, trying to find something good to happen out of it. And because I couldn't find the grace for myself. I felt like a total fraud, so it was, I was able to say, okay, I just know better now. I'm just never going to do that again. It's
Remind
okay.
yourself of the good things that you do, the good parts of you. That's part of overcoming it, is reminding yourself of all the, the times you were kind and positive and helpful and loving.
The scale. Tim?
I'm always reminded of when Jesus was asked, what's the greatest commandments, right? He said, love God, love your neighbor as yourself. We're really big about telling people, you got to love people, but we can't love others if we can't love ourselves. And we do live in a society where we are a self-centered society. So there's a fine line between being a narcissist, and just truly loving yourself. But loving ourselves means we love the good and the bad. We will embrace the broken part as much as the whole part, because it takes all the pieces for us to be a whole person. And
no, I can do that for somebody else. I can't do that for me.
Well, I
you
know,
can,
but it's, this is where, but it does take practice. And The one thing I learned from one of my stepdads, and I didn't learn much from him other than what not to be, but he did tell me one thing. He says, never say can't. As a third grader, I didn't quite get it. But as I grew up, I began to realize I understood what he meant. I can do all things. Now, of course, I'm quoting a scripture. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. But even if a person's not a Christian or doesn't have religious beliefs, I can do all things. I may not be able to do them all well right now, but at least I know I can work towards loving myself.
Yes. And I think that's
I purposely avoid. I purposely avoid being around a lot of people anymore. And because I know sometimes people think, well, avoidance isn't good. But when you do deal with anxiety and stuff, and you know that there's certain things that trigger feelings of shame, avoidance kind of becomes self-care, and because I tended to work around religious. Say it again.
I don't know if that's healthy though.
Well, it's there's a balance. It's like I work around because of I'm in ministry and that I tend to work around religious circles. Religious circles are really toxic, and at some point I just had to realize this is stealing my peace.
In that case, yes. Totally validated with that.
You're making the choice.
Right. So I'm more selective in who I'm going to interact with. So like, Sherry, I met you in that, and I had to say, okay, is this person going to contribute or is it going to become a negative thing? Well, it's been a very positive thing because, I know with you, Sherry, I feel safe. You're not going to judge me. There's other people I know, it's like, no, I already know. You just have that feeling like if this person really saw who I really am, they're going to judge me, and I don't need that, so we become discerning.
Yes. And Tim, I think that also speaks to being your authentic self. Being my authentic self means I also get to choose, when it's better for me to step back, step away, not, be part of a group or whatever the case may be. So, you're not avoiding your shame. Your shame, you're close to it. You know it. You just aren't, the situations. You're not going to put yourself in a situation where that little boy inside you're protecting him. That's really part of it too. It's that I'm protecting every age within me because I'm working on loving and accepting every age within me. And that means I may not hang out with the same people I used to. As you heal and as you grow, you do change how you interact with others and who you choose to be around. And that is
what you put up with.
It's also what I call, instead of self-centered, it's centered on self. That is so vital to self-love. It's not self-centered because actually when you go inward and you do the inner work and you are trying to love yourself, that love can pour out to others. You inevitably bring more love and joy to others, but finding that within yourself, that's the work. That's the hard work.
And one of the things people used to try to shame me with is I have always been my personality type. In the military, I work well alone. I don't play well in the sandbox because I'm too busy trying to organize the sandbox while everybody else is screwing it up. So, but in the military, I learned I work well on projects by myself, and that's fine. As a teacher, I'm by myself in a classroom. I collaborate with my teammates when I have to, but I get to be, I'm with my students. And yet I had a priest I worked under when I was a postulant going to seminary, who one day said, I question your commitment to the church. And I was like, why? You never go to the social events. I said, I serve at every mass that we have. I visit the shut-ins. I'm at the hospital. I work in the community.
Yeah.
I don't like social events. They trigger a lot of anxiety in me, because social events is when people start their backstabbing and gossiping, and there's interactions that take place that make me very, very nervous. So
Yeah.
I channel my energy into one-on-one type work.
Mhm.
But that wasn't good enough for him. And then I
Right.
thought to myself, this is a guy who can't keep a wife, whose mother he shipped off to a nursing home, whose adopted son won't even talk to him. Why am I going to let him judge me? Who is he to
that's
judge me?
right. And you don't want to necessarily judge him, but that feels like
No.
that part of you that is trying to reconcile inside yourself. Wait, I don't want to take on, because remember what you said earlier about you became the perfect student, the perfect everything. So someone in authority not, seeing you as doing something positive,
Right.
it brings out that part of you that notices the faults within them, because we all have them. And so that nurturing that you can do for that part of you is like, you know what, let's step back. And, I'm going to just be with that boy, that part of me that still has some anger. I mean, that's the other part of this. A lot of times we carry so many emotions around the
Wounds.
past, and there's layers
Yeah.
to them. And another layer comes out, and you're going, wait, I thought I already dealt with this. And here's another layer. And it's like, Sherry, it's what you said, you're working on it. You're working through it. You're finding a lesson in it, learning from it, and recognizing, okay, I'm going to step back. I'm going to see what I can, glean from this. And that's why they call it inner work, because it is work. And so truly, to overcome shame, feelings of failure, learning to love ourselves is doing the internal work. It is looking inward. It's not finding the answer from someone else. It's going inside and going, and stripping off the layers of what we're not, so we can be our authentic self, who we are, warts and all, as they might say, right? Just every part, and loving every aspect of ourselves, even if we don't like every aspect of ourselves,
we can change that.
Right. And there's value and worth, right? There's value and worth in every single human being on this planet.
Right. And whose standard are we living up to? Now,
that's what I want to address. That's what I want to say, because I jumped your shit a little bit for, whoa, you shouldn't have said that. You shouldn't have judged him back. But I think that we should have definite discernment as to whose opinion we value.
Right.
If someone is overweight and giving you weight loss advice, maybe that's not the advice you should listen to.
Right.
We should not credit everyone's opinion as worthy. And that will help eliminate shame too, because if you constantly give everyone the power of truth over your life, that's going to create so much shame, and you're not even going to know who you are. But when you figure out who you are, only the real things you need to deal with will resonate.
Right.
Because it's like, that's not true. You can't say that about me. I know who I am now. But if it is true, that's when the shame goes, oh God.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But that's something that, okay, this is what I need to work on this week. This is what, yes, this is, okay. Yeah. Unfortunately,
my tendency,
lesson.
Right. My tendency is to accept people as they are.
Me too.
I know priests are not perfect. I'm a priest, and I know I'm not perfect. So why would I expect anybody else to be perfect? What it's hard though is when you have accepted somebody for who they are, and yet they don't accept you for who you are. Then it's kind of like, wait a minute,
and you know what? We got to move on, because that's when you just know, okay, I've showed I'm being my authentic self, and that just means we're not a match. It's just some people aren't meant to be, you know, a part of our inner circle. I mean, sometimes they're part of our work circle or something else, but they don't have to be
Right.
part of our inner circle.
Well,
Or
and
share
I'd say in the last chapter of the book that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away
is walk away.
Yep.
with an open heart, with an open mind.
Mhm.
But if something is, you know, there are things where there was a song, "Don't Go Away Mad, Just Go Away."
Yeah.
You know?
I've never heard the song, but I agree. It's,
Yeah.
you know, because
Yeah.
it's almost that, you know, and this is kind of piggybacking, Tim, on what you were talking about. I moved to a new area, new state. I'm meeting people and, you know, on the pickleball court, I'm meeting people in more of a spiritual setting in different, you know, different areas. And it's kind of this little, I've just noticed I'm not all in. I'm just kind of more discerning. And that's been for me the people pleaser, because people forget the fear responses are not just fight or flight, they're freeze and fawn
Yeah.
is people pleasing. And that was mine. I was a fighter and I was a people pleaser. So, and it was this discernment of, okay, well, I can play pickleball with this person, but I don't really want to be anywhere else with them. You know, like they can be, they can, you know, we can rotate on a pickleball court, but other than that, yeah, not my cup of tea.
Yeah.
And it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't have to, you know, we get to discern who's in our lives and who we, you know, really share our hearts with. And that comes back to this. I keep coming back to, it's about loving ourselves is how we overcome shame. It's embracing, it's really facing that shame, looking at it and loving ourselves through it. And
well, we are way over. So
we are. Oh gosh.
Yes, way over. I do want to just say something while I have you guys here, because Kevin, you kind of triggered me. How dare you get me with this little comment? You mean I'm not perfect? You mean I can't do everything? Nah, I want to be perfect. I want to be able to do everything perfect. Yes, I know. Accepting
perfectly imperfect. Perfectly
that whole exceptional, not perfection thing. Yes,
Yeah.
I need to repeat it more. I love you, Kevin, so much. Thanks for doing that. Okay. I have a bunch of banners for you, Beth.
Okay.
Uh,
Wait, I said okay. Everydaypeaceandpurpose.com is great.
Find her. Go look her up. Buy her book.
Yeah.
And then itty bitty calico kitty.
Oh, my little kitty. I still have a calico kitty. It's all about self-love, Tim. I'm trying to help, you know, children, you know, that see their value and their worth, no matter how little, because I had a teeny tiny little itty bitty calico kitty. Yeah, it's, you know, if I know you know, I wasn't my mother. I saw myself becoming my mother and I was able to move, you know, in a different direction, mothering. And now I'm up here with my son and his daughter and seeing, you know, our relationship. So I do believe we can break generational shame and generational. Yeah. So that's important for me too. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you so much for coming on. This topic may need to be revisited because there's just so much more to talk about.
So many layers.
I had to cut you guys. I had to end the show, and I don't even want to.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on. And everybody go buy her book, go to her website, all of that good stuff.
Thank you.
Father Timothy, thank you so much. I hope this was a good show for you.
Thank you for having me. It really was.
Any final words, and where can people find you?
My ministry is St. Francis ISM, and you can find us on Facebook and YouTube. My YouTube channel is way out of date right now because my tech person is behind, but you know, you can find my sermons on YouTube, and my live stream and a lot of my work is on Facebook. And my personal page is Timothy Warren. You'll find my handsome face there, you know, and just, you can follow me. My personal page, I'm much more social, political. St. Francis, it's more theology in that. So yeah, social media is where I live now.
Okay.
Well, thank you both so much. I absolutely love this show, and I'm going to be thinking about it for a while. And that song's finally out of my head, so that's very good.
Yeah.
I'm going to send you backstage and close the show. Thanks again. This is a really hard topic, right? But I think it's something that at least at some point in our lives, we all feel, or at least should. I don't think that shame is necessarily bad. I think if you live in it, if you dwell in it, then it can be very counterproductive, and it can even be deadly. Don't let anyone doubt your worth. Don't let anyone tell you you are unworthy, because you are worthy just because you're here and you're breathing. And I love you for that. Thanks you. I can't talk tonight. What is up with me? Thanks for watching, and thanks for your input. Do not forget to check out my book. I got hard copies in 13 years. It's out. Love it. I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it. And Beth blew my mind before the show and what she said. It was so beautiful. If you like the show, share it and subscribe. Thanks again for watching. I will see you next week. And as always, walk in love. Mwah! See, I'm even wearing the shirt. Walk in love. Bye.